everyone, welcome back. Ready to dive into another book today? We're looking at Today Matters by John C. Maxwell.
Always loved Maxwell's insights. This one really gets into making the most of, well, today. Should be a good one.
Definitely. Right off the bat, he tackles these big success myths, and I've got to say, it's refreshing. We've all heard those overnight success stories, right?
Yeah, and those can be super misleading. Maxwell uses some powerful examples to show why we shouldn't buy into them too quickly. Like he talks about Bernard Loiseau, amazing chef, 3 Michelin stars.
Whoa, 3 stars? That's like the top of the culinary world, isn't it?
Absolutely. But even with all that success, Loiseau tragically ended his own life. It's a harsh reminder that all the awards and recognition don't equal happiness. Sometimes that constant chase for achievement can really take a toll.
Makes you think about what success really means. It's not always what it looks like from the outside.
Exactly, and that's a huge part of Today Matters. It's about deciding what truly matters to you and then making choices with your time and energy that reflect that.
And it brings it back to the importance of today. I mean, it's so easy to get stuck in the past or anxious about the future, but Maxwell really hammers home that today is all we've got.
He does, and he uses this really fascinating story about Oscar Wilde to illustrate this. Wilde was famous for his wit, his lifestyle, but things took a dark turn later in his life.
Right, kind of a classic example of someone who seemed to have it all. What happened there?
Well, Wilde actually reflected on this and talked about how he'd wasted his potential. He talked about giving in to long spells of senseless and sensual ease, essentially saying his choices, even in private, had added up to his own downfall.
Wow, that's powerful. Every choice matters, even the little ones. It all adds up.
Exactly, and that's where John Wooden's philosophy comes in, which Maxwell talks about, making each day your masterpiece.
Ah, John Wooden, the legendary coach. How does his philosophy fit into all of this?
Wooden believed that success wasn't some finish line, but a daily pursuit. Giving your all every single day, no matter how small the task, that's how you build something great.
So focusing on those seemingly unimportant moments and making them matter.
Exactly. Think about building a house, right? Every brick matters, even the ones you can't see. They all build a foundation. It's the same with our lives. Each day is a brick.
Powerful analogy. It's about consistency. Not just those big, splashy moments, but the small, daily actions.
Exactly. And it's empowering. Success isn't about luck or some secret formula. It's about showing up and giving it your all every day.
Totally agree. We all have the power to shape our lives one day at a time. And speaking of shaping our lives, I'm curious about what Maxwell says about a positive attitude. Is that something we can explore?
Absolutely. He's got a lot to say about the impact of mindset, and I think you'll find it incredibly valuable. It's funny, we hear about positive attitude, and it can sound, I don't know, kind of cheesy, but Maxwell gets into how it actually works, even when things get tough.
Right. We know it's good to be positive, but how does that actually translate into success?
He's got this great story about Joe Louis the boxer. So, picture this. Championship fight, Louis is in the ring, and he gets knocked down by his opponent, Tony Galento.
Joe Louis knocked down. That's got to shake your confidence, especially a moment like that.
For sure. But instead of taking the full count, Louis pops right back up, ready to keep fighting. Later, his trainer asked him, "Why didn't you stay down and recover a bit?" And Louis said, "I thought about what Galento would be thinking if I stayed down. I had to get up."
Wow. Even in that moment, he's thinking strategically, turning it around.
Exactly. It's not just about feeling good. It's about having that inner strength, that control, even when things are rough. And that can change everything.
He used it as an advantage almost. It makes you think, how often do we let those negative emotions hold us back from seeing a new opportunity?
All the time, right. And Maxwell talks about how this affects not just us, but the people around us too. Our attitude spreads.
Oh, 100%. Being around positive people, it just lifts you up. And the opposite is true too. Negativity can be so draining.
It's huge in relationships. Think about the people you love spending time with. They probably bring that positive energy, right? It makes a difference.
It's like that saying, you're the average of the 5 people you're around most. We've got to be mindful of the energy we bring.
Totally. And speaking of being mindful, Maxwell talks about something I'm big on, prioritizing for impact.
Prioritizing, always a work in progress. There's never enough time. Where do we even start?
Maxwell talks about the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. Basically, 80% of our results come from just 20% of our efforts.
Okay, so finding that crucial 20%, those high-impact things. But how do we know which those are?
So there's this story about Charles Schwab. He was president of Bethlehem Steel. And Ige Lee, this productivity expert. Lee gives Schwab a simple but powerful strategy.
All right, I'm intrigued. What's the strategy?
Write down the 6 most important tasks for the next day, rank them in order, then focus on the top one until it's done, no distractions. Then move on to number 2, and so on.
Sounds deceptively simple, but I can see how focusing on one thing at a time could be a game changer.
And it worked. Schwab was so blown away by the results, he wrote Lee a check for $25,000. A fortune back then.
Wow, that's saying something. Seems like a good lesson in doing less, but better, you know.
Absolutely. And it applies to everything, not just work. Relationships, health, personal growth, anything you want to see progress in.
Makes you think. And it actually reminds me of something else Maxwell touches on: the importance of family. It's easy to let work or other things take over, but he seems to be pushing for something different.
He's big on family, even though he knows it's not always easy or perfect. No family is.
That's kind of refreshing, actually. Trying to pretend it's all perfect doesn't help anyone.
Right. He says it's about making the effort, even when it's hard. Create that safe environment for communication, problem solving, celebrating the good and bad together.
Like building a family culture where everyone feels supported no matter what.
Exactly. And even when life's crazy, make time for family. Vacations, dinners, just being present. Those little things make a huge difference.
Those little moments, those shared experiences, they really do build those strong bonds, don't they? Like piece by piece.
Perfectly said. And, this idea of investing in family, it goes hand in hand with something else Maxwell talks about, taking care of our health.
Oh, for sure. You can't pour from an empty cup, right? If you're running on fumes, it's hard to show up for anything.
He breaks down how it all connects. Physical, emotional, intellectual, even spiritual.
A more holistic view, realizing they all play a part.
Exactly. And he's really open about his own struggles, which I think makes it even more powerful. He turned things around by making conscious changes and putting in the work.
There's something about someone being real, sharing their own journey, that makes it feel more attainable.
Totally. And what I love is he emphasizes finding what you enjoy so you stick with it.
It's true. There's no point in forcing yourself to do something you hate, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be sustainable.
Right. And he even talks about sneaking movement into your everyday life, taking the stairs, walking at lunch, even dancing around your house. It all makes a difference.
Love that. Finding those little ways to move more makes it feel less daunting.
And don't underestimate laughter. It sounds so basic, but just having a good laugh, it's such a stress reliever.
It's true. Sometimes we forget how good it feels. Okay, switching gears a bit. What about financial wisdom? That's something I'm always working on.
Huge topic. And Maxwell dives right in. He doesn't buy into that money equals happiness thing. He says true wealth is about so much more.
Which I think we all know deep down. There are plenty of people with money who are miserable, and plenty who have very little but live really fulfilling lives.
Exactly. He says it's about having a healthy relationship with money, being responsible, planning ahead, using what you have wisely.
Be intentional no matter how much you have.
And he tells this really inspiring story about Suze Orman.
Oh, love her. Her advice is always so down to earth. What's her story?
Well, she actually struggled financially early on. She lost all her savings to a bad investment at one point.
Ouch, that's got to be tough to come back from.
It was a huge setback. But she took control, learned everything she could about money, and ended up building a career helping others do the same.
Turned it into something positive.
Exactly. And Maxwell uses her story to show that we can all take charge of our financial well-being. It's not about getting lucky. It's about making informed choices.
Owning your own financial future. Now, before we wrap up, there's one more thing I wanted to touch on, this idea of faith as a guiding principle.
It's a big part of his philosophy. And I should say, he doesn't always mean faith in a religious sense. It's more about having that inner compass, a strong sense of values that guide you.
Having that integrity that helps you make tough decisions.
Yes. And he talks about how that kind of faith helped him through challenges in his own life. He also talks about finding mentors, people who embody the values you admire.
Surrounding yourself with good people.
Exactly. We're not meant to do this alone. Asking for guidance, finding support, it makes a huge difference.
It actually makes me think about relationships in general, which is another big theme in Today Matters.
Oh, absolutely. He talks a lot about nurturing those connections, putting in the effort to really show up for the people in your life.
Going deeper than just the surface level.
Exactly. And he talks about generosity in relationships,
Hmm.
giving without expecting anything in return.
That's powerful. Approaching relationships with that kind of openness.
And he uses Dave Thomas, the founder of Wendy's, as an example of this.
I remember him. Seemed like such a kind person.
He was incredibly successful, but also dedicated to giving back. He started the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption to help kids in foster care find homes.
Wow, using his success to do good in the world.
And Maxwell's point is that we can all make an impact no matter where we're at, finding ways to contribute using our own unique abilities to serve others.
It's about recognizing that we're all in this together, and even small acts of kindness can make a difference.
Beautifully said. And, it all comes back to one of the biggest takeaways from Today Matters, this idea of embracing lifelong growth.
I love that. Learning and growing throughout our lives, it keeps things interesting.
Right. And Maxwell really emphasizes that it's a journey, not a destination.
But it can feel overwhelming, There's so much information out there these days. Where do you even begin?
He talks about creating a system for capturing all that information, taking notes, highlighting in books, anything that helps you make sense of it all.
Otherwise, it just goes in one ear and out the other, right?
Exactly. He also talks about actually using what you learn, experimenting, finding what works for you. He even shares his own personal growth routine, which involves listening to audiobooks, reading, meeting with mentors.
He lives it. That's inspiring.
Definitely. And as we wrap up here, I think it's important to note that Maxwell isn't just giving us tips or tricks. He's presenting a whole philosophy for living a more intentional, more fulfilling life.
It's about taking control and realizing we have the power to shape our own lives day by day. A powerful message.
It is. And as a final thought for everyone listening, Maxwell says make every day count, right? But what if we took that even further and treated each moment as an opportunity, a chance to grow, to connect, to make a positive impact?
Now that's a challenge and an inspiring one, bringing that kind of awareness to everything we do.
Imagine the possibilities if we all lived that way.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking this deep dive with me. It's been a great conversation. I feel like I learned so much from Today Matters.
It's been a pleasure as always. And for everyone listening, remember, today matters, so make it count.